Facebook famously determined that if a new member invited 10 friends within 14 days, they were hooked for life. So they focused religiously on driving the user experience to this key metric. If you apply this product-based approach to B2B sales, then you can identify those users that are ready to talk. And this method is known as the Product Qualified Lead, or PQL. So if you sell in a freemium, open source, or trial model, then the PQL method is critical to give your sales team visibility into who is ready to talk. So talk to your data team, or better yet, partner with Whaler's team of data scientists to develop a PQL model tailored specifically for your business. You'll be empowered by knowing exactly when a user is ready to convert. To see specific examples, go to getwhaler.com/Andy. That's GETWHALR.com/Andy. And as a bonus, if you sign up to learn more about Whaler and PQLs, then Whaler will send you their optimized 2-page master services contract that you can leverage for your own business free of charge. It's time to accelerate. Hi, this is Andy. Welcome to another edition of Frontline Friday with my regular and very special guest, Bridget Gleason. Now, before we get to the show, Bridget and I have a favor to ask of you. We'd really appreciate it if you took time right now to leave a review for this show on iTunes. And while you're there, click the button, subscribe to Accelerate. Make sure you get Frontline Friday automatically each week. Also, we need to hear from you. More specifically, we need your sales questions. What can we answer for you? What challenges do you have that we can help you with? So go to accelerate.fm/frontline and enter your question there. Each month, we're going to select one listener's question to be the question of the month. And the winner will receive a $50 Amazon gift card. So remember, go to accelerate.fm/frontline to give us your question and maybe win $50. So Bridget, how are you today?
Fantastic.
There you go.
Now I feel like I should change it because it's so predictable.
We'll have a new nickname for you.
I know. That's good.
I like the captain, though.
But all good. I do, too. The idea of a cape and all that, as we've talked about, I like.
All right. Yeah, it's still on my list of things to have an illustration done.
Okay, good. Keep that on the list.
Yeah,
I
should. Yeah. Let's see, if I have a picture of you, I could take like the caricaturist over in Central Park. They could do something.
And add a cape.
Add a cape. Yeah, okay.
Now we're talking.
All right. We're going to have to see. All right.
Yeah, let's end this show. I'll give you some time back.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about books. It's another book episode. One of the favorite episodes people have. We're going to talk about books we've read that have, we thought had interesting things to say. And what do you have? We'll start with you.
Okay. And mine, well, I read all kinds of different things.
You're making excuses for it already.
No.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about like the books that I'm reading. They're not How to Crush Your Number. How's that?
That's okay.
Okay. So one of the ones I read recently, a book by Jim Paul and Brendan Moynihan called What I Learned Losing $1 Million.
Nice.
And it was interesting. They had said, as they were writing the book, one of the authors had said that there are so many books out there that talk about do this and this is how you make $1 million and get rich quick. But there's so much to be learned by failure. There's a lot to be learned when we lose. There's a lot to be learned when things don't go our way, and to not miss those lessons. And I think about this in sales a lot, that there's some things we win, things we lose, and just being able to handle that. I mean, I think he said he lost this amount of money in like 75 days.
Whoa.
And they talk a lot about the psychological reasons why someone would why you would stay in a losing position. And just trying to understand sort of the mental, the emotional that goes with the analytical. And it was just a really interesting read. And I guess for me, the one other thing that he said in there, which I thought was important, also important just in life in general, in sales for sure, never tie your sense of self-worth to something that is external to you and that you don't have control over. Right. And, he talked about some of the losses.
A hard lesson.
It's a hard lesson, and it's a lifelong lesson.
Yes.
And so some of the losses, some you could control, some you can't. And so the same in sales. But if you've got your ego and self-worth tied to hitting a number, to being at the top, to a certain title, to making certain money, it's a hard life. It's a hard life, and it's going to be frustrating.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, there's all sorts of books written and research about, hey, what your goals are, right? I mean, if your goals are making money, or if your goal is getting that order, then your odds of actually achieving it decrease. There's a certain amount of indirection that's required from a psychological level in order to optimize your achievement. It doesn't mean you're not goal oriented. It doesn't mean you're not driven to some degree, but I think it's that the ability to create some sort of space, right? A gap there between your personality and the ultimate achievement that is a hallmark of high achievers and people that have more resilience than others.
Yeah, that notion of resilience, so important. And they talked about this here when this trader, he actually, this guy was a trader on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. He had actually had a seat on it. And when there was at one point, and there were several points, but he had lost money. One point, he had lost a bunch of money, and he called his boss. And his boss said, okay, but now you got to get back in there and you got to keep going. Like you can't let every loss devastate, and you've got to figure out, okay, number one, how much are you willing to bet? And then also, what do you do when there is a loss, and how do you recover? And this notion of resilience and really staying in it, so critical, so important.
It is, and it's that's sort of how you separate people so early on in sales. At least I have, and people I've hired, they're certain, new into sales, new into the profession, is there a certain amount of bounce back. And I recall people I hired when I was my first time being a manager, when I wasn't really any older than the people I was hiring. And to me, that was always sort of a critical point. The first deal, first sizable thing they're working on, if they lost, how'd they react? And you could almost predict pretty reliably whether they were somebody that was going to be able to have the resilience to keep on going, pick themselves up, continue to move forward, improve, take the loss for what it was, which was a learning opportunity, and then move on.
Yeah, and I definitely, that's one quality that I look for in salespeople is this resiliency. What are examples of just where something hasn't gone your way, where you've had a loss, where things haven't worked out? How do you handle that, and what do you do? Because that's part of it in sales. You've got to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, it's not the same as not caring. It's just because I've seen people that lost and didn't care, and they were the same as the people that lost and were devastated in terms of how well they turned out in the end.
They're right. They're very different.
Yeah, they're different, but it's the same result. I mean, you have to care. I mean, that's why you're in it. I mean, if you think you can sell without having an emotional stake in it, whether for trying to help the customer or yourself, you're just kidding yourself. So you can't be completely divorced from the outcome, but it's what you do when it happens, as you said. So one I read that was good, actually we touched on it last week, more than touched on it, is a book by Jeff Colvin, Humans Are Underrated, What High Achievers Know That Brilliant Machines Never Will. Excellent book. Anybody concerned about, as they should be, about what your future is as a knowledge worker in an age where technology is improving its ability to, through artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on, to handle more and more jobs. How do you maintain relevance? How do you increase your relevance going forward? And Colvin's book is a great read. I really recommend people pick it up and read it because it speaks directly to sales.
And what were for you, what were the biggest sort of ahas for you in that? As you and I've talked about, we've read about this for a long time. What were the big ahas for you?
Well, I think it was actually seeing someone other than myself who is a real professional writer, doing the research and saying, yeah, these are the trends, right? As we look back on what's happened economically, historically, and how technology has impacted employment and what the current trend is. And, it's not favorable for people who think things aren't changing. And so if you understand the changes are coming, you understand and identify, especially in sales, where we're different, right? Where we can provide value that machines can't, and focus on those areas. And that is that point of interaction with a customer. It is that relationship, it is that connection, it is that collaboration, co-creation of value, all that. Those are the things that are the province of humans, human to human. And he has a phrase in the book that I thought was really, really interesting, which I was just going to dig up here. One of the key skills is being able to look someone in the eye, right? To look into someone's eyes, metaphorically, his statement was, to look into someone's eyes, that turns out to be metaphorically and quite often literally the key to high value work in the coming economy. And,
wow.
Yeah, I think that's true. In fact, I think that's part of the reason why, we see in cases like, everybody's the big rush to inside sales. Certainly understand from an economic standpoint based on certain products that are being sold, but the thing that's being missed is that face-to-face contact. And to the extent that you think that you don't need that, then you're going to find that your role is going to be able to be replaced.
Do you think that the face-to-face, like how much of that can be solved by Skype and video conferencing, where
surely
you're
some of
not,
it, but not all of it.
Yeah.
I think we have, people will dispute this, but I think without a doubt, especially in the more complex enterprise-oriented SaaS businesses, people need to be in front of the customers more frequently. They'll shorten sales cycles, they'll increase their close rates, and they'll have longer-term relationships with their customers.
Well, and I think, most salespeople I know want to be out in front of customers. They're not the ones that are saying, I want to sit.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know.
But it's the financial reality. It's expensive, to the cost, the time out of the office, et cetera. But so important also. It can really
it has to be used wisely.
Yeah, it does have to be used wisely.
I mean, but I'll use the example I've used before is, 20 years ago when I was spending all my time in Europe and Asia selling these large multi-million-dollar communication systems, the truth was, I was only going over once a quarter, right? I mean, I'd see a customer, if somebody was buying something, worth a lot of money, I was maybe seeing them once before they signed the order. Otherwise, it's all done over the phone. So it's not like you're every call. It's not like you're a field salesperson, but you can't not do it at all.
And even field salespeople use the phone.
Sure. So it's, the economic argument is really a red herring as far as I'm concerned. Because if you're a manager and you're managing it appropriately, is you need to be able to use that, as you always have, as it's always been the case for a long, long time, use the travel strategically to make something happen.
And that's all, like you said, that's always been the case.
Always been the case.
Always been the case.
Right. So economics is not going to kill your cost of acquisition, especially if you have a lifetime contract value of over $100,000 to put somebody on a plane to make a sales call, especially if you have multiple calls in a single location. It's just not. But if you increase your conversion rate from the horrible conversion rate that so many SaaS companies seem to suffer from to something that's better, that cost is paid back quickly.
Yeah. Interesting.
So anyway, so that was that book.
Okay.
What's next on yours?
Okay, another one that I read recently was called The Halo Effect. Do you know that book, The Halo Effect? Phil
No.
Rosenzweig.
No.
And also really interesting. His premise is that a lot of the our business thinking is shaped by, he says they're delusions, flawed judgment.
Sure.
That's distorted because of a company's performance. So, for example, if a company does well, the halo effect is, oh my gosh, they've got amazing leadership and they're so strategic and they've got a fantastic culture and a visionary leader. And if the company's not doing well, we say, well, the leader wasn't any good. The company didn't know their strategy. They couldn't execute. And actually, if you start to dig and do some of the research, not necessarily the case. I mean, if a company does well, some of those things need to exist. But companies that don't do well, it's not necessarily because they didn't execute effectively. Yep. They may have been out executed by someone, or they may have made a call on strategy that took them a direction where they didn't win. But it was just a really interesting sort of, again, way to think about, just because a company's doing well, I don't need to think, and you do hear this a lot. I hear this from the VCs that I've worked with in the past. They'll want you to go talk to XYZ person at a certain company because they assume anybody at that company at any level, they're doing it well. Well, they're not necessarily.
Well, no.
They may have one piece that is, another that's not. So it was a good read.
Yeah, I mean, I like that because it's what it's saying is, and this has come up. People have done studies of the success of Google's and Google and other companies that have, sort of broken out and really become gigantic successes, saying we tend to underestimate the impact of luck.
Luck. Definitely, we underestimate the impact of luck in there.
Right place at the right time.
Market conditions for one or the other. There's, like, he talks about the delusion of a single explanation. So it's not the leader, or it's not, oh my God, they execute so well. There's a lot of things that factor into it. So it was definitely a very thought-provoking, just also sort of a fun read.
Well, I think that to some degree, it seems to me like it sort of relates a little bit to what Colvin was talking about, and that, these differences, it's humans, right? I mean, we got humans at the helm, and fundamentally flawed, and we're neither as successful or as bad as we might appear to be. It's just people trying, and things. As I said, some companies do a great job executing a plan, but even then, there's luck that happens, and so hey, that's okay. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, there's always been this sort of, you've seen this in Silicon Valley a lot, sort of this hero cult developed around certain companies, and certainly there were a lot of smart people at that company, but that wasn't necessarily the reason.
Yeah, and I guess for me also is I'm guilty of being enamored and putting this halo effect on people or departments or companies because they've got, they've had good performance at some point in time. And it's, there's things that they've done well, but this doesn't mean that everybody there has been responsible. So no. I'm the one who tends to put a halo on. So it was good for me to just catch myself in that.
Right. And we do that in part because of data, right? Increasingly, the information we consume is in the form of data.
Right.
For people that the journalism we see online, the writing we see online, there's a greater reliance on data. And as we've spoken about in the show, and another book that I interviewed the author on, Accelerate, called Every Data, the Misinformation, the Little Data We Consume Every Day, is we are just horrible at understanding the meaning of data. We take data and shape it to fit our worldview, as opposed to using data and really understanding what's behind the data, what's behind the variables, what's the context that it was collected in. What was it really testing? Oftentimes we don't have that information, but we don't stop to think, as John H. Johnson, who authored that book, said, we don't stop to think, okay, we should be asking, before I consume this data, let me ask myself, what's missing here? Right? What don't I know about this data before I just use it to confirm what I already believe?
Yeah, and he talked a lot about that. That very point is that he even talked about books like Good to Great and In Search of Excellence, and that sometimes even the data collection that we can make, it's a better story. It told a better story, and we're attracted to these great wild stories. You do these 3 things and you'll go from good to great, or they had these 8 qualities. And we can, as you said, we can make data say, God, a lot of different things. We can confirm our own biases, which we know. So yeah, he did talk a lot about talked a lot about the data portion of it as well.
Well, and it for me, it brings back a thinking about this. I saw this. I'm a soccer fan, and I was on one of my soccer sites this week looking in, and there was a clip from coach of the Colorado Rapids, which is a team in Major League Soccer, and the coach, a guy named Pablo Mastroeni, who longtime player in the U.S., both club and U.S. national team. I think still one of the most decorated players on the U.S. national team in terms of number of appearances. But soccer is like every other sport, and the data has being used big time, right? Big data, all the sabermetrics in baseball and the equivalent metrics that people harp on in certainly soccer is no exclusion to that. And he had just had a tough loss, and he was sort of being hammered by people about his tactics and why don't you use this because the metrics say that and so on. And I don't know. I took down, I actually transcribed part of what he said, which I thought was really interesting because again, it speaks to how we're so easy to want to just rely on the data and we forget about the human. And so I'll just read his quote because he was kind of frustrated when I said, pundits and the people who like to comment on the game will look at possession and shots on goal and all those kinds of metrics that have very little to do with heart and courage and the commitment to each other. And so it gets back to saying it's okay to be who we are. And he said, people have lost the plot with all these passing and shooting percentages and saying, if you shoot from this spot on the field and do it 12 times, you will score. Well, I'll tell you what. This is him saying, I'll tell you what, the stats will lose to the human spirit every day of the week. That's
beautiful.
Isn't it?
And that's the thing it really is. And it's beautifully written. Yeah, beautifully written, beautifully said.
Yeah, he spoke it. Right. So, and then he got up and left. He had a very short press conference. And he got taken to task on social media afterwards because people were saying, oh, you're denying the validity of metrics. And it's like, no, that's not it at all. The metrics are important. Yeah, it's important in our business and sales. But ultimately, it's about passion. It's about connection. As sellers, right? This human aspect of who we are makes a difference. It doesn't matter what the stats say. At the end of the day, it's still about us.
It's still, and you know what? That was so well written. And as you said, it could apply to salespeople the same, that yes, there are these, how many calls, how many dials, how many connections, how many discovery calls, how many POCs, that's all important. But what do you bring to it with each call? What do you bring to it with each discovery call? What do you bring to it with each? And that passion and that all of that the resilience and all these other qualities, that's what really makes it. And I think that's what makes a difference, the difference between a great rep and a good rep also.
Yeah. Well, I said the power of the human spirit. So I really like that. I'm going to, probably by the time this airs, I'll have written about it, because I just think it's
worth writing. I mean, that's
it's very powerful.
Really, really powerful.
Okay. So I guess back to me, a book, I guess we only have time for the last one here, is a brand new book that's out. I think comes out the week this episode airs. I was fortunate enough to have an advance copy and talk to the author, which is a new book by Anthony Iannarino. He just, within the last year, he published his first book, The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need, and then somewhat ironically follows it with his second book, which puts the lie to the first book. Apparently you do need 2 sales guides. But this book is called The Lost Art of Closing. And it's a good book because it's not about closing in the sense that we throw the term around in sales, and it's, none of that silly stuff about being a closer. It's about how you, throughout your entire process, how you gain commitments that enable you to take the next step, that lead to the next step, that lead to the next step, that lead to getting the ultimate commitment from the customer, which is to buy your product or service. And very well structured, Anthony's a very smart guy, very good writer. So it's a valuable book. People want to pick it up and read it. And even people who have been in sales for a long time, it always helps to get another perspective about how you shape what you do. And like I said, well done on Anthony's part.
Yeah, I'll look forward to reading that. We were on, we had a podcast with him, and he's, like I said, he's a smart guy. Like you said, he's a smart guy. And I'll, even though he did have to write a second book to prove the lie of the first book, that it was the only one you need, I'm not going to ding him for that.
That was, the title of the first book was not his title. So
okay.
Yeah,
so
I'd actually interviewed him once about the first book before he was going to publish it himself, and then he submitted it to a publisher, and they took it on, and so they changed the title and everything. So we had to redo that whole interview because the structure of the book and the title changed completely. But he actually submitted, I think, 2 books, or they knew there was 2 books coming. So nonetheless, that's a good book. So we'll leave the other books we're going to talk about till next time we talk about books. There are more,
and we'll have more. That's right.
Yeah, lots. I've been reading lots of books recently. So, and many more to come, unfortunately, to some degree. But I enjoy reading. All right,
you would have to. You would have to. And what you do if you didn't enjoy reading, that'd be tough.
Yeah. Well, I think for all of us in sales, right? If we don't enjoy reading, why are we in the business? Yeah, if we're not going to learn.
That's right.
So that's another discussion I had with somebody that we'll have at a future time about that particular topic on continuous learning, because we've talked about it before, but it's a topic we need to come back to again, because it's ever more important in light of some of what we talked about even today and in our last episode about how you continue to be relevant and add value going into the future. It's you can improve your empathy, your ability to collaborate, your teamwork, so on, but at the same time you still need to become more and more of an expert in what you sell and your customers. So we'll get to that. That's right. I look forward to it. Bridget, as always, fantastic talking to you. See, I took your word. I like it. You can borrow it. I'll be Lieutenant Fantastic. You can be Captain Fantastic. I'll be Lieutenant. All right, Fantastic. Lieutenant. Okay, all right, Lieutenant. Perfect. All right. So we'll have a great weekend. And friends, thank you for spending this time with us on Friday, if you're listening to it on Friday. As always, make sure you come back, join us again next week. In the meantime, make sure you listen to episodes of Accelerate. Lots of great content there. Bridget, until next week. Until next week. Have a great one. Thanks.